Everyone. So recently I've gotten some requests to go over my processing procedure for doing planetary imaging. So in this video I'm going to be going over how I image or how I stack and process Saturn and Jupiter. So the program that I'm going to be using to do my stacking, which you can see is already in the works here, is ASI Studio. This is the program I like to use. You can also use Auto Stacker with pip or Reggie Stacks. Those are also really good programs. And like them, ASI Studio is free. ASI Studio just works for me because my cameras and a lot of my equipment is made by ASI. Now, I already got this stacking for us because this image is just over 6,000 frames, so it takes about 10 minutes for this to stack. And we're already coming into the end here, so we're just going to wait for just a minute and let this finish. And then I will show you guys kind of what I do on this end before I save the image. Okay, here we go. Okay, so it took it 5.5 minutes. But here we go. You can see our image is looking really good there already. Now what I want to do with this is we're going to bring in some brightness so we can brighten up Saturn, and then I'm going to bring in some sharpness, and you can see we're already pulling out so much detail with this. And then we're going to go ahead and raise our noise reduction. I usually keep that about 50%, and then I think we'll give it just a little more sharpening. With the sharpening, you just got to be careful, because if you over sharpen, then the picture starts to like granulate, and we don't want that. So I think that's about as far as we're going to get that. Maybe add, just a little more brightness to it. Yeah, we'll go about right there. Now, this is about everything I need to do in ASI Studio for the stacking and just doing my light processing I do here. So all I have to do now is just click the save button, and then you can see it saved it in my directory that I am working with my images. Now we're going to go over to Adobe Photoshop. This is the program that I use for editing my images. So I'm going to choose Open, and I'm going to choose my ASI outlet. Give me a little shortcut here, and I'm going to move to my directory where my pictures are. And now I know from my clock that this one right here is the one that we just did. So we'll let that open. There we go. Now, doesn't that look familiar? Now, you can use other programs to edit your photos, but I'm going to focus around Photoshop with this. Now, the way I process my images is I have an add-on that I purchased for Photoshop that was, I think it was like $22, $23, and it's called Astro Panel. So we're going to go ahead and open up our Astro Panel here. And then I'm going to go over to Landscape. And this is where this workflow right here is pretty much all we're going to use to edit this image. So the first we're going to start with is we're going to correct it for, I think, let's try tone. And that gives me an idea of what that looks like. I don't really like that, so I'm going to go Control Z on my keyboard and just take it back off. Because a lot of what I do is trial and error. So now let's try to bring in the color. See, I like the way that looks with the color. That, that's okay. That can stay. Now let's move on to our next correction, which we're going to correct it for haze and aberration. We're not going to do banding just because that tends to mess things up a little bit, so we're not going to do banding. Now we're going to come down to noise correction. I like to do one reduction of the noise. And then for the hot pixels, it just depends on how bad your image is. This one's not too bad, so I'm just going to tell it to do a level 2. So it's going to kind of smooth the image out for us. We're going to come down to the recovery tab, and we're going to tell it to adjust our highlights, or our shadows, and our highlights. Sharpening and contrast, we're going to tell it clarity, I believe. No, I don't really like the way that looks, so we'll take that one back off. I don't really, we're not going to mess with anything in there. We're going to come down to this one, which is the glow area, and I'm going to tell it I want the pro and the sharp. Oh, look at that. It's really starting to pull it out now. Now, we're not going to do any dodge and burn or any of those. I think this is about as far as I need to go with the panel. So I'm going to close that out. Now, we're going to come to our actual adjustments in Photoshop. So we're going to raise the brightness a little bit. And we're going to raise the contrast some. Or no, let's drop the contrast. Just a smidge. That's looking pretty good there. And then come over to our exposure. I want to drop that just a bit. And I want to drop our gamma just a tad. Just because it's got too much brightness going behind it. So we want to drop that just a bit. And then let's come over to vibrance. And I usually try to bring that up just a pinch. And right about there is a pretty decent image of Saturn. I'm pretty happy with that image. And every time I process them, they come out different. I can never get the same picture twice. No matter how hard I try, it just does not work that way. Now back here on the desktop, I believe it is this one. There we go. So this is the finished product of that same image we were working on. See, this is one that I did last night. See, it came out completely different than what we're looking at here. Like I said, I can never get the same image twice, but with these fundamentals that I've just went through here, you've kind of got the groundwork for what you need to do, because a lot of this is trial and error. Now, let's move on and let's do an image of Jupiter together. So we're going to go to my opening tab. I don't need to stack another picture because, you guys already seen that process. It's the exact same when you're doing Jupiter as if you're doing Saturn. It's the same. So we're going to go back to our working directory. This is the last time I imaged Saturn. Let me blow these images up just so I can find one that I really like. Let's go with this one. Yeah, that one looks pretty good. So here's one of my Jupiter images. Now, once again, we're going to go back to our Astro panel friend, because he is our buddy. Now, We're going to go ahead and correct for tone. We're going to correct for color. And we're going to correct for white balance on this one. And see kind of what it looks like. So with this one, I think what's going on is it's just a tad too bright from the start. So I'm just going to Control Z, and we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. And I'm going to come up here to the image, adjustments, and I want to look at my curves. And I'm going to pull this down just a tad and tell it okay. And now, once again, we're going to process for color, tone, and white balance. Now, that's a much better image right off the bat. Now we're going to go down to image correction. Let's correct for haze and get an idea what it looks like. And then I kind of like to bounce back and forth, and I'm just doing Control Z to undo it. So you kind of see, do you like it better with or without? You know, and then, so I think it's without for this one. And then let's go ahead and do aberration. That didn't really do much. So let's do a noise reduction. Now this one, there is some hot pixel action going, so I'm going to tell it to do a level 4 on this one. And then we're going to let that kind of, and you can see it really smoothed it out. Now let's go down to the recovery. Let's look at our shadows. Yeah, I like it with the shadows. Ooh, the highlights really popped. Now let's come down to sharpness and contrast. Let's correct for clarity. And then, let's see, I want to come down to orientation and glow. I think I want to do color. No. I think I just need to do Pro from in here. That's looking pretty good. Dodge and burn, we're going to tell it Pro. I don't really like the way that looks. But yeah, like, I mean, as you guys can see, it's just a lot of trial and error. I go through, I play with this. If this doesn't work, I go back, I can restack the image, do some more adjustments over there, come back, play with it. But usually I get it pretty good. So I'm going to go to the exposure, and I want to try to drop some of that gamma out of this. And see if, oh, I see what it's done. Okay. So let's come back up here. I need to be up here at the top. There we go. Now let's pull some of that gamma out. That's starting to look pretty good. Let's try to add some vibrance. Maybe just a tad. Yeah, that's not half bad. So, you know, this is a pretty good looking image of Jupiter. So again, like you can see what I'm doing here, it's just a lot of trial and error is all it's about. And eventually you come out with a pretty good image. You just got to play with it. But also, as a general rule of thumb, I try to not spend more than 6 minutes processing a single planetary image when doing the editing side of things, because if you're getting much past that, then you're doing too much and the image is going to show it, you know. So I mean, it's all about just doing small tweaks, you know, because if your picture is good enough to begin with, you don't really have to put all that work into it. Now again, I hope this video helps you, gives you some tips and tricks, points you in the right direction. And as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. I'm here to help. But I think we're going to end the video here. And the next video I am going to focus on editing the moon. And there's a lot of stuff that we got to go over for the moon. Because we're going to go over how to do a mineral moon, how I just do my just almost a natural looking picture. Yeah, there's a lot of tricks and tips that we got to go over there. So if you haven't done so already, subscribe to my channel and like this video, and I will see you on the next video. I hope you come in for that.